Welcome back, everyone. We are almost ready for our third session of the day. There have been a few questions about the agenda for the upcoming sessions here. So we're moving into our third session, and on the screen now you can see the next sessions that we have coming up and at what time they are. So if you need to tune in or out, you can always just use the same link and tune in for the session that you want to join. But for our next session, it's all about building a robust IoT tech stack. In the world of IoT, having the right infrastructure is critical for ensuring that your devices perform reliably, especially in challenging environments. Today, we'll be hearing a real-world case story that highlights how features like IoT connectors, traffic monitor, webhooks, and VPN play a crucial role in launching a product. We'll also explore troubleshooting tips from a challenging use case in a rural area, offering practical insights you can apply to your own projects. So I am pleased to introduce our next speaker for the session, Mattia Fiumara. He's a tech lead at Aguro Tech. His hands-on knowledge is going to give us really valuable insights into overcoming real-life challenges in IoT deployments. And Mattia, it's so great to have you on board. I'm just going to bring you on stage here. So welcome, Mattia. I hope you are ready to go, if you can hear me. There we go. Oh, Mattia, I'm not sure if I can hear you. Can you just try that again? I cannot hear you. If someone in the chat can maybe write if you're hearing, it might be my computer. But let's just see if someone else would be able to write in there. Let's see. Okay, so there seems to be no sound coming from you, Mattia. Would you be able to maybe quickly refresh your browser and see if you can join again?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Welcome, Mattia. We got that out of the way.
Always difficult.
Yeah, no matter how many times you do it. Well, I'm going to give the baton over to you, Mattia. We're very excited to hear your case story.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the introduction. So today I will be talking about building a robust cellular tech stack. And this is a case story, so it's definitely not a blueprint on how you should be doing it. It's just one story, how we experienced it, and things you should need to ask yourself when you start on this cellular journey. The outline today, I will give you a short introduction about the company, Aguro Tech, what we do. I think it's always important to start with a bit of context about the business and how we ended up in this world of cellular technology. Then I'll go straight into the how to really build it out, how to build out your cellular tech stack, what kind of questions you should be asking yourself, what to think about, also the questions we really asked ourselves at the start. After this, I'll dive into the platform, the Onomonodo platform, and this will be really a technical deep dive into different aspects of the platform, different features that I think are really really valuable, and maybe you'll pick something up if you're already using the platform. If you're not already using the platform, then it will be a good intro, and you'll see how you can really build it out, your solution around the platform. Finally, I'll present a connectivity case. That's a real life case scenario of an issue we had in the field and how we use the different aspects of the platform to solve this issue. And I'll close down with some takeaways, and of course there will be Q&A afterwards where you can ask your questions. So as a start, I would like to play a video so you have a bit of understanding about the company. Let's see, I can play that.
The farming industry is changing. Climate change is impacting the farming industry with natural disasters and droughts. Our natural resources are becoming more scarce, and food production needs to increase to feed the world population. Farmers are looking for ways to secure their harvest and leave their soils in a better state for the next generation. Agurotech helps farmers to overcome these challenges by providing them with solutions that help them sustainably optimize their use of resources while increasing their yield. Agurotech's first product is an irrigation management system that tells farmers exactly where, when, and how much to irrigate. The irrigation advice is tailored to each farmer's individual crop and soil type and helps farmers to significantly increase productivity while reducing use of water, fertilizers, and pesticides. Our solution helps farmers all over the world and runs on local weather data, satellite imagery, data entered by farmers, and the latest scientific crop and soil models. Farmers can connect in-field sensors to the platform to receive real-time measurements of soil moisture, temperature, and electrical conductivity on several depths. Agurotech enables farmers to unlock their farm data and to prepare for a profitable and sustainable future. Join the Agurotech platform today to learn more about what we can do to enhance the performance of your farm.
Okay, thanks for watching. Yeah, so what we do is really trying to bring technology into the agriculture industry. And we do that using sensor technology. So historically, farmers really make decisions based on their experiences from their father and even the generation behind. And yeah, we're really trying to give them tangible data so that they can use data-driven approaches in, for instance, deciding when to irrigate. And this way, we're optimizing farmers' resources. And we do that using sensor technology. So on the screen here, you can see a soil moisture sensor that we developed. It's measuring soil moisture at different depths. And with this information, we can give good advice, depending also, of course, on the crop and soil types, on when, for instance, to irrigate the crop. And yeah, we do this powered by cellular network technology. And we do it with Onomonodo also since, I think, almost 2 years now. And yeah, how did we end up at in this position? How did we really build this technology? Well, we start first with asking ourselves the right questions. So the right questions, maybe the first one you need to ask yourself is, should I even use cellular technology? I already saw some comments in the chat about LoRa technology, for instance, if that may be suitable for your application. So definitely you should start with this question. Maybe cellular is not the right approach, but I'm assuming since you joined this webinar, you probably already answered this question with yes. So if you do, then yeah, you get into the world of MNO and MVNOs. We've also seen this in the previous talks. Yeah, what kind of MNO or MVNO should you be using? Are you going to deploy your technology internationally or just on a national level? Then maybe a smaller local MNO could suffice. But if you're looking at international deployments, for instance, then I think it's way better to go for something like a full MVNO or something like Onomonodo. Yeah, what kind of service level do you need? What are you looking for in a platform? Is it just very simple, or do you really want extensive debugging features, for instance? And of course, the pricing model. So yeah, you want to have a pricing model that scales with your amount of devices. Yeah, I'll dive into one of these questions a little bit deeper. So that's about radio access technologies. You need to know what kind of performance or what kind of technologies your devices are going to use. So are you using high performance, very high data rate applications, or are you more focused on low power? Yeah, for us, obviously, we're working in agriculture, and these devices, they have to stay on the field for a complete cultivation season. So almost the entire year they're outside, and they have to be extremely low power. There's not a lot of data that's going through the air. So we're using yeah, more the low power technologies like LTE-M, narrowband IoT, But we also have 2G fallback, and yeah, your provider needs to support these kind of technologies. So that's one of the questions that you should ask yourself and really know the answer to. In the end, for us, everything kind of pointed towards Onomonodo, so that's how we ended up here. And I'll go now a little bit more in depth in how we leverage the platform. That will be divided into a couple of sections. So first, I'll talk about kind of the basics. So that's SIM management and network management and usage. And yeah, then I'll go more in depth about the whole data flow of your application, how you can build it out using, for instance, connectors and webhooks. And then lastly, I'll end with SIM monitoring. And this is really on the SIM level, you go into the details of an individual SIM. And yeah, these things will be also very useful when you start debugging real life situations. So we'll get also into the details in the real life case when we discuss this case into SIM monitoring. So first, SIM management. This is typically what you end up looking at. If you're in any platform, you have some kind of search bar where you can search for SIMs. You can always search by their SIM ID, but I think what's really convenient is to be able to search by a label. And a label can be anything. You can basically set a label yourself to any SIM ID. And a nice thing about the platform is everything that you see and do can be accessed through API. So you can label a SIM through an API integration, for instance, during your provisioning step, or when you assemble your devices, and then you can label it maybe with a product ID or a serial number or something like this. And if you do this, then you can really easily use the SIM functionality, the SIM management platform, to search for your SIMs by however you like to. So that's really the basics of any platform. Yeah, next to that is of course the network management. That's a little bit different for MVNOs because of course there's a lot of different networks available to you. And yeah, here's an example of let's say Paraguay, you can in Peru, for instance. And the thing I want to give, if you're already using the platform, is that you can just enable everything, but with this big red button at the top left. But yeah, you will be selecting every single type of network. And maybe that's not really the best idea. If you look at some of these networks, they can get very expensive. So for instance, this network, it's 43 euros for a megabyte. If you compare that to a normal cost, which is definitely way below the euro ranges, then even if you would send only 1 kilobyte of data on this kind of network, that can cost you 43 euros. So be very careful when you select networks. Be selective. And I think by default, most of these crazy networks, they are disabled. But it doesn't hurt to go through the network list yourself and really pick and choose your networks manually. If you do somehow forget and you get a really big bill at the end of the month, then there's this usage section of Onomonodo. So you can always find the culprit and find your SIM. You can download a CSV report and you can order a total cost. I have to admit, I had to do this once, and afterwards I knew what networks to disable. But in this way, yeah, you can really see immediately, okay, this SIM was causing the high cost, and I know which network now I should disable. So again, if you prepare well and select your network selectively, then I think this you should not have to use very often, but it's nice to have. That's kind of the basics for the platform. Then I'll go a little bit more in depth. We will get a bit more technical, and I'll talk about the data flow. So typically, what your devices are doing on the field is there's some uplink and some downlink. That's very basics. You have to send some data to your backend services or your cloud services, and you also want to be able to send some data down to your devices. And that can be, for instance, a firmware upgrade or a security upgrade, for instance. Maybe you want to send some configuration down. And you can do this with connectors and webhooks. So without any of this, you can also do it, of course. You can choose a typical IoT protocol like MQTT, co-op, LW, M2M. You can use custom protocols on top of UDP or TCP. But in the end, yeah, what you really have to do is you have to encrypt your traffic. And yeah, by chance, last week, I think the Cyber Resilience Act was adopted by the EU. And I think this is even going to play even bigger role now. So you really have to encrypt your traffic. So if you use any of these protocols, you have to use the secure version of them. And of course, that can cause some difficulties, right? You need to manage your public-private key infrastructure. You have to flash some kind of device keys into your devices during the production or provisioning. Manage the private key infrastructure. You have to also do on-device encryption. And there's this really great white paper from Onomonodo. I stole this from your blog, I'm sorry. But it's a great chart. It really shows you how impactful encryption can be on data transmissions. So here you can see a typical transmission when you encrypt data can be up to 15 seconds. And well, if you let the connector handle it for you, so you let the Onomonodo platform handle the encryption for you, it can save you a third of the time that you're on air. And a third of the time, that's actually a lot of time if you think about it, because the most power usage that your device is going to be doing is usually just doing the sending data over the network. So if you can save a third of your time by just letting the platform do the encryption for you, then that's a really great win. So I think connectors are great. How do they look? They look a little bit like this. So you have a big screen with some fields. You can enter an endpoint there in the middle. There's a host where your data will just get forwarded to. It doesn't matter where your device is sending the data to. Can be IP address 1111, and your data will just get forwarded to this endpoint. So you don't have to deal with even doing any DNS lookups, for instance. So your device can just send to an arbitrary IP address, and it will just get forwarded. What I would advise is to put some pass-throughs on your connectors, and I think also some of these are enabled by default on the platform, but I think it's good to note them down. So these are DNS, MQTT, and co-op, and it doesn't really matter what kind of protocol you are using, but maybe your device manufacturers, the modem manufacturer, can be also using some of these protocols and communicating with their backends. And this is maybe not something you're aware of, but it could be that your modem also requires a firmware upgrade, some security patches maybe, and they could be communicating over one of these protocols. And if you enable a connector like this on your device, then you might be blocking their firmware upgrades. So when you use this kind of connector, then I would always make sure you put the pass-throughs on, even though you might not be using any of these protocols. And also, I think what is good to do is in the host, in the endpoint, you should provide some kind of a key there so that your backend services know that this data is coming from Onomonodo, because otherwise anyone could be sending data to your endpoint if it's a public endpoint. You could also do this using IP security, for instance, but that's a topic that I won't be diving into this talk. But yeah, you can also, of course, solve this in different ways. But when you do have this connector set in place, then all you get is a simple JSON. It looks a bit like this. There's a timestamp. Your data is already encoded for you. You just have to decode it using base 64. And as you can see, the destination IP is there in the header information. So there's a destination 1234 and a destination port 1. So it really doesn't matter where you are sending your data to. It just gets forwarded to your backend. So it's really quite convenient to work with, and it's also actually a secure way to move your data around. So that's one way. So that's from device to your backend. But you also, of course, want to be able to push data to your device. Usually that's configuration or OTA firmware upgrades. You could use webhooks, for instance, to trigger some events in your backend so that you know when you want to send some specific data. So in this case, again, you can put in a URL here. And whenever some kind of event happens, you will get a notification in your backend services, and then you can run whatever maintenance procedure that you want. You can even trigger on data usage or usage alerts. If you see maybe some weird number of network registrations, you can perform some kind of routines. So webhooks can be quite useful in many ways when you're building out your technology stack. I think that's about it for the general data flow. So we'll go now more in depth on the SIM level. So that's really when you select a SIM and you want to check its performance. So on an individual SIM basis, that's when you start looking in SIM monitoring. And these screens can be really useful in determining if your solution is working or your device is working as you expect. The first screen is the usage screen. You can really see the periodicity of sending your data, and that should be, I think, normally for an IoT application, you will come online a couple of times a day, or maybe at least if you're in a low power domain. And here you can quite easily see that device is behaving normally. It's coming online at a regular interval, and there's no strange data usage going on here. The second tab, which is the network logs, now here you can see actually what network your device is connecting to. So that's also very useful. You can see how long is a typical connection. Is that normal? Is it on 4G? Is it on a narrowband IoT? Is it on 2G? And you can also see the country. So this can be very useful. For instance, if you are in a area which is close to a border, you can sometimes see that your device might be even switching networks from one country to another country because it's so close to the border. So all this information you can see here, and yeah, I think this is one of the most useful screens, and it's one of the first things I look at if a device could be misbehaving. One step down was the traffic monitor. Here is really the raw internet traffic, so the TCP traffic. You can monitor if you keep your tab open. So this data isn't gathered on the Onomonodo side. You really have to actively have a session open for it to gather, and that's of course due to security reasons. You don't want these packets to just be stored indefinitely. So you need to keep your tab open, or you can use a tool which I'll show a little bit later when we handle the connectivity case. But this is very useful to debug, for instance, your IoT protocol. Is it behaving well? Is the response request mechanism behaving as it should? Lastly is the signaling logs. That's also quite detailed. To be honest, I don't fully understand these logs all the time. But there's a team at Onomonodo that does. So you can always ask questions if you see something that you think it's weird. This screen I do use if I see I see some activity, for instance, in my network logs, or no activity, sorry, in my network logs, but I do see some in my signaling. I can deduce at least that my device is trying to connect maybe to a network, but it's not being successful. So these logs can also be very useful to know if your device is actually still trying to do something, yes or no, and if yeah, if it's not completely dead. So that's can be quite useful. So I think that's all the features that I wanted to talk about. So I will go into the connectivity case now. And this will really tie all the features together in how you debug typically a problem. So this is the case. We are somewhere abroad, so we can't easily go to the device on site. There's only a 2G fallback mode available for us in this area. So that's I note that 2G sunsets are there on the horizon, but in some countries or some areas, you still have to rely on 2G, unfortunately, and LTE-M or NB-IoT can be not available in these kind of areas. So the device is on a 2G fallback mode, and there's a high data usage, and there's a lot of repeated connection events. And yeah, you're thinking, okay, what's the problem? Okay, we're not delivering data to our end clients, so we need to solve this problem. And that's usually when you dive into the Onomonodo platform, anything that's related to connectivity. Yeah, you'll start there, and yeah, basically what you do, you start from the usage, right? You looked at the usage screen, and here you can see, hey, it's not usage doesn't look completely normal to me. There's some data sent on the connections, but we can see that there's actually no measurements coming in into our cloud service, and we're not delivering any value to our clients. So that's a bit strange. There's some data being sent, but nothing is coming in. Network logs, we see a lot of pending connections. You see some connections that are open for even 5 minutes, whereas they should be open for maybe a couple of seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, right? That we saw in the previous slides. So that's also very strange. The connection should not stay open that long. In the signaling logs, we can see a heavy amount of signaling. This also gives us some kind of information that, hey, the device it's trying to do something, but it's not really working, or the data is just not coming through. And then there's traffic monitor. And as I mentioned before, you can keep your tab open and gather the data traffic. You can save it as a Wireshark trace from your web browser. But this is not always so convenient, especially if you're away from your PC. You need to enable some kind of sniffing, and there's this nice tool available on Onomondo's GitHub. It's called Onomondo Live, and it's a command line tool. So it's not really a platform feature, I guess, but it's a separate tool that Onomondo provides. And with this, it's the same as Traffic Monitor, except it's a command line variant. So you supply some API key to the tool. You specify some SIM identifier and a file name, and then you can get a Wireshark trace. And you can just put this on your laptop or on some cloud service, even if you'd like. And you can gather data in the background without you having to keep a tab open. So this can be very useful to passively gather some data so you can further debug a problem. And yeah, we did this for this specific case, and this was the output. So this is a typical Wireshark trace. And yeah, what we were seeing is a lot of red, and red usually means bad. In this case, that's the same. A lot of red text. So let's dive a little bit deeper in this TCP traffic. You can see really going from the start. I'm not sure how visible this is, but in essence, TCP is doing some kind of a handshake. So we're first establishing a connection with our backend services, and that starts always from the device side. So the device is sending some kind of message to the backend called SYN, and then your backend is supposed to answer with an acknowledge. And actually, what we can see in this traffic, it's quite detailed. We can see the sync message going to our backend services, and there's also an acknowledgement being sent. But it seems like this acknowledgement is never being received, and our device is keeps on trying to send the SYN message, and actually the backend keeps on replying with an acknowledge, but we just never receive that acknowledge. And yeah, if you just keep on trying, trying and trying, then you will never get to be able to send your data, because you really need to perform the full handshake before you can send any data over TCP. And this is raw TCP, but it also applies to, for instance, MQTT, which has an underlying transport, which is TCP. So if you're using MQTT in your applications in poor radio conditions, this can also happen to you. And also your radio access technology can play a big part in this, because on, for instance, on narrowband IoT, you could have much higher latencies, and this could also be much more prevalent in these kind of radio technologies. So really know what kind of technologies you're using. In this case, we knew it was 2G, so we were expecting this to work, but still, due to bad reception, the handshake was just going wrong. And luckily, what we could deduce from this is we could do quite a simple TCP adjustment in the settings and change the timings so that we give a little bit more time to do the handshake. Or we could do some kind of different protocol, like an unacknowledged protocol using UDP. And in this way, yeah, you don't even wait for an acknowledgement back from your backend service, and you just send the message unacknowledged. And that could maybe be a better strategy in these kind of that kind of conditions. So that's kind of the flow for debugging your real life case. You use mostly the SIM details and the usage, and it's actually quite powerful what you can deduce from all these this tooling and this platform. So this is my last slide. I just want to give some takeaways. I think in general, when you start on a cellular journey, is really know your requirements, know what you are going to do, what kind of technologies you want to use, know if you want to do an international deployment or not, and really know what is going to be driving your business case. When you do choose for something like Onomonodo, then yeah, you should leverage the whole platform. There's a lot of more features that I didn't even talk about, like VPN, which can be quite useful. Just make sure you really explore the platform and use it to your advantage. And yeah, of course, this is just one example. You just adjust it to your case, do what works for you, of course. There's not really one golden way, but I think I showed you really some good ways that you can use at least the Onomonodo platform to build your cellular tech stack. So thanks for listening. I think we can go to the Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, Mattia. This has been a really insightful session, and thank you so much for sharing. Please send your questions to Mattia in the chat. I think maybe one of the questions that kind of phrasing from some of the things we've seen in the chat here as well is what are the main considerations also in terms of technology selection when deploying to rural areas, such as in your use case?
Yeah. What is very prevalent in agriculture is also LoRa technologies, and that could also be useful, but it has to fit your business case. So if you have to deploy your own LoRa gateways, for instance, that's a very costly solution, and your end client has to install the LoRa gateway themselves. So for us, this didn't really make sense. That's why we went for cellular. And yeah, unfortunately, it's still the case that you can have challenging areas and not great connectivity. But we're really looking forward to the non-terrestrial networks to solve these kind of coverage areas.
Definitely. And what do you think is kind of the biggest connectivity misconception in the smart sensor landscape? So any considerations for people that are building new devices or future-proofing their devices?
I think the biggest misconception is that how much we're still relying on 2G networks. I think this is really the only thing you see is modules coming out for LTE-M and narrowband IoT. COP-Beast is a really big one. I think that could maybe cover some of these gaps. But yeah, in a lot of countries, there's no low power wireless area networks available even. And I think this is a really big misconception that we assume that these networks are available globally.
Definitely. And then a question from Sebastian. In your experience, what is the additional overhead in terms of battery or latency that the device has to have to use Onomonodo over not using Onomonodo?
Yeah, so that's I think it's great if you check the white paper from Onomonodo. I think there was a link in my presentation, and that really covers what kind of overhead you should be thinking about. There's also really great article by Koi Tech, which really discusses how much impact does encryption have on your device battery level. It can be quite big. Every second you can save on air is battery level saved. So that's really the main takeaway. If you should really try to get the airtime as low as possible to save most battery life. I don't have any specific. I can't quantify it, but there's some articles out there that do quantify how much longer you can live with your battery life.
Definitely. That's really great. Sorry if there's noise in the background. We have automatic smart windows in the office that I don't know how to stop. But maybe a follow-up question on that. In terms of using the connectors, have you seen any kind of concrete impact in the ease of cloud provisioning on your devices?
Yeah, so you don't really have to provision anything anymore. That's kind of that's the funny part. Of course, it's really a good idea to do it anyways, and just have that just to be sure. But yeah, you don't really have to provision anything besides maybe a product ID or a serial number or something like this, because you can send your data just straight to a connector, and that will handle everything for you. So I would still advise to do some kind of provisioning and set some kind of key, but it should not be necessary if you use connectors.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mattia, and for all your great insights and learnings you've shared. We're going to go over to a quick break. So thank you, Mattia. And before we go on to the next session, yes, we're going to have a quick break. And then we will be back in 3 to 4 minutes.